I am Maggie. I am 24 years old and an office worker, about to get married. I live at my parents' home, but I would prefer to leave even before I get married. The reason is that I don't get along well with my family. My family revolves around my younger sister, Abby, who is 2 years younger than me. My existence to them is almost like air, no, maybe slightly different. Mainly, for the convenience of my mother and sister, I become either invisible or a wallet. Maggie, I hate to ask, but could you prepare $300 for me? My mother asks for money very casually, without showing any sign of feeling bad about it. I contribute $1,000 to the household every month though. My father is still actively employed as a manager, and he earns quite well. My mother also works part-time 3 days a week. With my $1,000 added, we should be able to live reasonably well, though not luxuriously. However, about halfway through the month, I usually hear, "We're a little short. Could you add some more?" I'd like to know what they spend the money on, but as a child, I was never favored by my mother, and she doesn't really answer my questions. I've tried asking several times, but the conversation always ends with, "When I say we're a little short, that's all." You've never lived on your own, have you? Life is tough, full of unexpected things, and that's the end of that. It's unfair to say I've never lived alone. Ever since entering university, I've been saying I want to be independent. Each time, my mother has refused. Why rent an apartment when you have a home? It's not like the university is that far. Or it's dangerous for a young woman to live alone. It's safer and cheaper to stay at home. If you live on your own, you can't save much of your salary, and so on. Despite all this, I am often relied upon for money. They're probably just pretending to be concerned, but actually see me as a cash cow. I should just leave my parents' house, but how should I put it? When I give money, my mother beams at me. If I meet her additional demands, she praises me, saying, "As expected, you're reliable, Maggie." It feels good to be praised. And even though I know I'm being treated as a cash cow, I can't leave my family home. Maybe I'm quite sick. The only person who really seems to worry about me is my paternal grandmother. I've heard that she has adored me since I was born. My father once said, "When your grandma heard you were born, she waited in the hospital without sleeping. She was the first to hold you and was so happy, saying what a good child." Looking back, maybe that wasn't so good. My mother doesn't say anything, but she's not very close to my grandmother. So, I can't help but suspect there's something about the circumstances of my birth that bothers her. Abby, on the other hand, is absolutely doted on. Cute clothes, accessories, almost anything she wants. My mother used to buy them all when she was in elementary school. When I wanted a dress like One Piece, my mother immediately said no. Why can't I? I want to wear it because it's cute. Where would you wear such flashy, frilly clothes? Do you think you're a princess or something? If you wore this to school, you'd be the laughingstock. There's a way to say no, isn't there? I really thought so. My mother always complains about what I want, not just ignoring my wishes. By the way, the dress like One Piece was bought for Abby in a different size. How cute! Mom, I want to wear this outfit. Looks nice. It'll definitely suit you, Abby. Right after I was denied, it was decided in front of me. It's one of my oldest memories of my mother's differential treatment. But there are probably more. Forgetting them is the only saving grace. My father never says anything about my mother's attitude. Even when I cried to him, he'd irresponsibly say, "Your grandmother will dote on you, right?" According to my father. It's fair because my grandmother dotes on me and my mother on my sister. Moreover, my father also favors my sister. Abby has learned the wrong way from my mother's attitude. She obviously looks down on me. Maggie, lend me some money. My mother doesn't say lend, but my sister is different. It's obvious she has no intention of returning it, yet she casually says, "Lend it to me." I am a full-time employee, but Abby only works part-time. 2 days a week for 3 hours each. It's clear that our incomes are different. Normally, she might think to work harder to earn more herself. But my sister takes shortcuts, trying to easily get what she wants from me. What will you use it for? Does it matter? It does matter. I can't just carelessly lend you important money without knowing what it's for. You've never paid me back even once. If I tell you what it's for, will you lend it to me? Then I'll tell you. I'm going to buy a new designer bag. The way she says I'll tell you, as if she's doing me a favor, is all too familiar and disheartening. Regardless of whether I know the reason or not, I have no choice. If I refuse, Abby will say, "Okay, fine. I'll ask Mom," and that's what happens. Then my mother generously opens her wallet. And the burden is pushed onto me with a request to add a bit more. If I refuse further, Abby will inevitably cry to my mother that Maggie won't lend me any. And I end up being lectured at length. So, really, there's no need to ask why she needs the money. It's just my small way of resisting being treated as a mere source of money. Brian, my fiancé, is aware of this dysfunctional relationship. When we met and started dating, he said he was thinking about marriage. I wanted to hide my relationship with my mother and sister from him. But thinking about the damage it could cause if he found out later, I reluctantly opened up to him. I told him, "Brian, there's something I want you to know. About not being cherished by my mother, how unbelievably favored my sister is. And the financial burden that falls on me." At first, Brian was confused and said, "Really? Can parents make such a difference?" He seemed not to believe me. However, when he visited my family home for a marriage introduction, my mother blatantly revealed her true feelings, saying, "Wow, what a nice person. Isn't Abby good enough? Why does it have to be Maggie?" "Well, Maggie's good at earning, that's her merit. We want her to stay at home." This overt statement made Brian recoil in shock, and he understood the situation. Brian is recognized as handsome and works for a major corporation. I could tell he was desired as a potential husband for Abby. And Abby herself didn't seem entirely displeased. Which, despite being my sister, made me feel quite uncomfortable. Fortunately, Brian was not swayed by my mother and sister, and with a wry smile, he firmly stated, "In fact, I have decided. I will make Maggie happy." I remember clearly how my mother muttered under her breath, "You have no eye for women." Abby seemed to lose interest in Brian right away. She could always get new things, whereas I was given her hand-me-downs, which might have played a part in her attitude. Maybe she felt like she didn't need her sister's hand-me-ups? Thanks to this, I didn't have to worry about my fiancé being snatched away by my sister. When I told my grandmother, she cried with joy. Taking Brian's hand, she pleaded, "Please take good care of Maggie. Make her happy for a long time." Brian was moved to tears and gently promised, "Yes, I will take care of Maggie." I was truly happy at that moment. Wedding preparations take time. The ceremony was set for 6 months later. I seriously wanted to move out and live with Brian even before the wedding. But I could see my mother's strong opposition and gave up. The wedding preparations are slowly progressing. My mother is not involved, and my sister doesn't say much either. Those two only show interest in me for financial reasons. And otherwise, they don't care much. They often ask, "You'll continue working after marriage, right?" Yes, I plan to work full-time until we have children. After that, maybe part-time. I'm not asking about your life plan. Can you continue to send money home? That's what matters. Even after getting married, they expect me to keep contributing financially to the home. I have no such intention, but to avoid trouble, I just nod along non-committally. It's clear I'm only seen as a money courier. Annoyed by my mother's behavior, I focused on saving. I'm not particularly excited about the wedding itself. I'd rather use that money for our new life. Brian and I agree on this. However, given his respectable position in a major company, we can't have a shoddy wedding. We need to have a proper ceremony to uphold his dignity. Go on a honeymoon and invest in our new home, which will require a significant amount of money. But being treated as a cash cow by my mother and sister is a headache. Still, I found a way to alleviate these problems. My grandmother, wanting to celebrate my marriage, prepared a large sum of money for me, as much as $30,000. An enormous amount for a wedding gift. Grandma, is this okay? It's neither good nor bad. I've been saving for this. I wanted to live long enough to see you in your bridal dress. And you found a good husband. Please let me celebrate. My grandmother came to my family home specifically to give me the wedding gift directly. She preferred to hand it over in person rather than just transfer it via the bank. I was very grateful. However, my mother and sister witnessed the entire exchange, which gave me a very bad feeling. Dad, I'm afraid to keep this amount of money in my room. Could I use your safe? There's a sizable safe in my father's study. Mainly because his work sometimes requires him to bring home large sums of money. It's rare, but when needed, it's crucial. He agreed to let me use it. The safe is secured with a numeric lock, and I don't know the combination. After my grandmother left, I handed the celebration money to my father to put in the safe. Feeling my mother's piercing gaze, I was undecided whether to deposit it in the bank or to start paying various wedding-related expenses. Wanting to consult Brian, a week passed with the money still in the safe. The day after we decided how to use it, I came home to find my mother and sister smirking at me in the living room. What's going on? Hey, Maggie, look at this. With a malicious smile, my sister flaunted a bag at me. That was a new model from her favorite brand. I remembered it being quite expensive. Did you buy it? Mom bought it for me. Huh, good for you. I was surprised by how monotonously I responded. However, Abby's meaningful smirk didn't stop, nor did my mother's. What was going on? What is it? It's not just this. Look, a necklace, pumps, a new dress, and even cosmetics. Wait, what? I was shocked. Abby's favorite brand is a famous high-end one, with bags typically costing around $10,000, and pumps are never under $1,000. I wondered how much the total cost was. Mom, just because Abby asked you, doesn't mean you should. Do we really have the financial leeway to splurge on brand items like that? There was leeway a week ago. My mother also smirked. Then I remembered. She had been staring intently at the $30,000 I received from Grandma. No way. It felt good, spending $30,000 in one day. Yeah, we used Grandma's $30,000 happily. The $30,000 in the safe meant for the wedding. I used it for Abby. You don't mind, huh? I'm not interested in your wedding. It's more important to make Abby look good so she can attract a good marriage proposal. My mother and Abby started giggling, looking at each other. I was holding my head because I realized they were making a huge mistake. The $30,000 from the safe. That's not my money, it's not even for the wedding. What are you talking about? Did the wedding getting cancelled panic you? No, that's not it. As for the $30,000 from Grandma, I've already made payments here and there today, and the rest I've deposited in the bank. That was the reason I had been out. After discussing with Brian, we made payments for the initial wedding expenses, including a dress for a change of attire to please my grandmother. Of course, I didn't use all of it. The remaining money was definitely going to be deposited. My mother and Abby did misunderstand. Then suddenly, hey, where did the $30,000 in the safe go? My father came running into the living room, his face pale. $30,000? What? What's going on here? That's what I want to know. Why is the $30,000 gone? That was contract money I had to take to the company. My father works in sales for condominiums and for big purchases. Contract money can run into several tens of thousands. Normally, this is transferred to a bank. But occasionally a client prefers to pay in cash to avoid hefty fees. When he receives cash late at night, he can't bring it into the closed office. So he keeps it in the safe at home. After I received the wedding gift from grandmother, my father also closed a deal. The contract money was also $30,000. So my mother mistakenly used the money meant for my father's company deposit. My mother and Abby, realizing their mistake, turned even paler than white. That wasn't Maggie's money? You idiot! What are we going to do now? If it stays this way, it'll be as if I embezzled. What? You must be kidding. If I were just kidding, would I be this panicked? You've really done it now. My father shouted at them, ordering them to return the purchases for a refund or to get cash if they couldn't. Abby cried and resisted, but even my mother couldn't play favorites this time. She forcefully took the luxury items. They tried desperately to recover the $30,000, but time was short. My father needed to take the money to the company by tomorrow. Ultimately, they were only able to get about $10,000 at a pawn shop. My father had to plead with grandmother over the phone. I can help, but there's a condition. You need to deal with your wife and Abby. Deal with them how? Figure it out yourself. Didn't your wife coldly treat Maggie out of spite for me? I know she's always resented me for holding Maggie first when she was born. It's fine if she hates me, but what did Maggie do to deserve this? If you hate the mother-in-law, you hate your own child too. What kind of reasoning is that? Chastised by grandmother, my father seemed to finally see the light. He called my mother and Abby and declared, I'm divorcing you, and Abby, you need to become independent. And told them to leave the house. They cried and screamed hysterically, but my father was unforgiving. How can I work now, after being a housewife all these years? Dad, why me too? Enough. I've let you two get away with too much. No more coddling. My father firmly stated his position and apologized to me. Thus, my mother and Abby were expelled from the family home. And now live together in a cheap, run-down apartment. My mother hasn't found a job, and Abby is doing part-time work. I heard their life is extremely hard. This incident made me resolve to truly separate from my parents. And as a lesson from my mother and sister, I vowed never to play favorites when I have children.